get things going. People will probably still file in. I'll let Ruby catch them as they come. But thank you everyone for joining. First thing I just want to say is that we are recording this. So a lot of people have asked if they couldn't make it, so we will be sending this out. But I just wanted to give a heads up. This is being recorded. You're welcome to be camera on, camera off. Either way, we'll have time for questions at the end. But to kick it off, just wanted to say hello. My name is Ben Shapiro. I'm the director of Atlas. I'm here with Ruby. Ruby helps out and does so much for us in all facets of Atlas tennis. And before we spend a lot of time kind of telling you about Atlas, we wanted to give the floor over to one of our teammates, one of our co-founders, Eric Butorac. Eric's the tournament director at the US Open. I used to work on his team full time and still get the chance to do that a bit. Eric is, been with Atlas since we started, and we're super grateful for him for taking a couple minutes. So I think he just wanted to share a few words. So we'll pass it over to Eric.
Thanks, Ben, and appreciate seeing a bunch of people on the call tonight. Like many of you all, I am also a sports parent, just jetting in from a hockey drop-off and in the middle of what many of you are doing these days. So very much understand the world of having youth in athletics. Just a little bit about my background. Ben said I'm the tournament director at the US Open. I've been with the USTA for 10 years. Before that, I spent 13 years on tour playing professional tennis. And why that, the start of my pro career really kind of dovetails into how or why I want to get involved with Atlas Tennis. I was a D3 college tennis player at Gustavus Adolphus College. I ended up winning the national championships my senior year, and had a really good friend at the time from Australia convinced me to move to France. This I thought was a totally foreign concept. I didn't even have a passport at the time. I had never been to Europe, obviously, and was planning to be a high school teacher. But he convinced me that there was this club league that you could play over in Europe. There's this money tournament system in France that would be so much fun. We could have a summer doing that, and then I could go back and be a teacher the following year. That turned into, a couple of years of playing money tournaments, eventually playing some low-level pro tournaments, and 3.5 years later, I was stumbling onto the courts of Wimbledon. All along, I've kind of wanted to figure out how I can sort of give that experience back to someone else. And really, everything that I had gotten out of pro tennis was obviously, it's an amazing opportunity to be a pro athlete. But even better than that, with tennis, you get to go around the world. You play on clay courts, grass courts. You meet people from 6 different continents, and I'm lucky enough to call many of them some of my best friends. Ben brought this topic to me many years ago when he was working on our team at the US Open, and I knew I wanted to get involved, and we got a couple other founders as well who also had either pro tennis experience or international tennis experience. And what we wanted to do is sort of share our passion for tennis, our passion for travel, and our passion for just meeting great people. With not only the elite tennis players of the world, not the #1 ranked player in the country who gets to go to Junior Wimbledon, but really for every tennis player at all levels. And so that's sort of been the kind of the cornerstones of this company. And again, every second that I've invested in it has been just so validated by seeing the social posts, by meeting the kids, by the conversations we have with Ben, and seeing the parents jump on today. So Ben's an amazing leader, has does such a good job with the organization of these trips, and Ruby has brought so much energy to our team. Know that there's a great group of founders behind this company, and know that it's really rooted on using tennis to see the world, to grow as a person, and really ultimately, I think a lot of parents will look at this as thinking, wow, it's an opportunity for my kid to get a bunch of matches, and this is an opportunity for my kid to raise their UTR, maybe get exposure to college coaches. And yes, it could be all those things, and those are important. But I think more than anything, it'll show them that tennis is a sport that you can travel with. You can take it all around the globe. Every trip you'll go on for the rest of your life, they'll have a tennis court in that town, most likely. So hopefully it makes them come back to their city and wherever they live. and just want to play more. And we kind of use that as a gauge for success too, which is if it makes kids want to play more tennis, come back and be hungrier to practice and to learn the sport, we know we're doing something right. So yeah, nice to see some faces and see people interested. I'll let Ben, share a lot more about kind of the nuts and bolts of the program, but yeah, just wanted to have the opportunity to come on for a few minutes and share some of the sort of the foundations that this company was built on. So have a good evening and hope to meet some of you along the line. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Eric. Much appreciated. Thank you for jumping on tonight. I know Eric was down in Australia at the AO, so appreciate you taking some time as you get back into the ice cold Northeast. Quite a contrast from what it looks like down there. So we promise this will be 1 hour max, and we're going to stick to that. So we're going to go through our presentation. We're for sure going to leave time at the end for some questions. If you have questions as we're talking, feel free to just put them in the chat. Ruby will keep track, and we'll try to get to everything. But let's dive into it with really just the big picture question of like, what is Atlas Tennis? I think this may already kind of be repetitive based on Eric's really good explanation, and I think everyone that's here has at least some basic understanding of what it's all about. But before we get into the details of what each trip looks like and where we're going, what is Atlas? And the big picture answer to that question is it's a unique summer program for tennis players, teenagers, to combine tennis, travel, human connection. Everything we do is rooted in those three pillars. Those are kind of our guiding, temples that everything is centered around. And if it's not connected to tennis, travel, human connection, it's probably not a part of Atlas. Everything we do ties those three together in some way. So that's always kind of where we're coming from when we're thinking about our trips. And that's something that I think comes through in what they actually look like.
Yeah, and I'm just going to break down kind of some of the basics of what each trip really looks like. Our summer trips over to Europe are 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to a new country each week. Our groups are 10 to 15 players around the ages of 14 to 18 years old, and they represent all levels of players. So we have multiple itineraries for players of all levels, whether you're a competitive national player playing a ton of tournaments within your USTA section, on your JV team, on your varsity team, or you really just play tennis in the summer as a great way to hang out with friends. We have a trip for you, and we want you to be a part of Atlas Tennis. So you'll travel with your group. Those kids represent areas all around the US and Canada, and then they're going to go play with local players in Europe, supported by our 2 to 3 coaches who are the 24/7 chaperones of the players. I'll dive into that a little bit more later, but again, these players we're not only helping them become better tennis players, but better people, giving them experiences on the court and then exposing them to a whole new world outside of it. So if it's their first time traveling to Europe, by themselves, first time traveling alone regardless, we're there to support them every step of the way and make this as memorable and unforgettable as an experience as it can be. A couple of the little things, again, it's co-ed. We aim really for a 50-50 split, boys and girls, or as close to it as possible. And just accommodations wise, we're staying in mostly hotels in Europe. And that's 2 to 3 to a room, always single gender. We're able to, when we can, to try and accommodate preferences. If kids make friends along the way, if they're coming with a friend, we'll do our best there, and happy to talk through those situations as well. And kids are traveling throughout Europe via train, plane, van, walking around, all the above, really getting that local experience in the most safe and comfortable way possible. So yeah, that's pretty much the basis and basics of our trip, and then we'll move on to just more who we are.
One quick thing I want to add that is a common question just about the rooming. Never shared beds. If it's 3 per room, there's 3 beds. So that's just a common question I want to mention. Who we are. So you guys met Eric. He is one of our co-founders. And he's just one of the super impressive, awesome people who are behind this. So in addition to him, we have Megan Moulton-Levy. Megan played pro tennis. She and Eric actually played at the US Open together in mixed doubles, which is kind of cool. She is the VP at JTCC, which is huge tennis facility in the DC area. It's where Francis Tiafoe grew up. Number of pro players have come out of there. I've gone down there just to kind of learn from their coaches. I would say it's probably top 3 facility in the country in terms of developing not just good players, but good people. And I think it's a great kind of model that we try to take as much from as possible. She's also VP of USTA Board of Directors. So Megan is extremely involved in so many different areas of tennis in the US and all different areas, from the pro game to player development to more local. So just a wealth of experience and such an awesome person. Andrew Chimura, he's the president of Grand Slam Tennis Tours. So he's been in the tennis travel business for 25 plus years. He just got back from Australia. He's probably gone down there the last probably 25 years. So everything we do in terms of tennis and travel, bring those two together, he's been there, done that, and just a wealth of experience, every kind of situation he's been in before, and really is inspirational for us in a lot of our growth and our goals. Sam Duvall, he is an agent. He represents a number of pro players, including John Isner, Cam Norrie, Riley Opelka, McCartney Kessler. So a lot of Americans, but also a number of international players. His agency, Top Notch, they also run pro events. So he runs the Cleveland WTA event, a number of challenger events. There's actually one next week in Cleveland that Atlas is a sponsor of. So we're excited about that. So Sam is a guy that just can connect us. When we're at Wimbledon, we're able to maybe get some cool access through his players. When we're at any event, he'll know someone. If one of us will know someone, and often it's him. You guys have met me. I've been working in tennis really my whole life. Played college tennis, was a college coach, worked at the US Open with Eric, and now I'm here doing Atlas, and it's been just an awesome kind of culmination. And I'm just as kind of passionate about tennis as ever.
Yeah.
Ruby, I'll throw it over to you.
I'm Ruby. I went to the University of Oregon and played tennis there. I played international tennis quite a bit, mostly starting as early as 15. I went out of the country for the first time. So I've been in your kid's shoes, and it was transformative, not only for my tennis, but just for broadening my horizons as a human being and what I want to do and study. So couldn't recommend it more as it changed my life. So I'm excited to hopefully meet a lot of your kids. Yeah.
So our story, that's a little bit about us, but kind of what's the connection? How did we all get together? I mean, Eric started to tell that story of how I brought this to him, he brought it to the rest of them, and everyone was just kind of interested in it, not necessarily from like, this is the most incredible business idea and I want to be an investor. That could be part of it, but really what drove us all to get to where we are today is our shared experiences of growing as people through tennis and travel. Eric and Megan played pro tennis. Sam didn't. I didn't. Andrew didn't. Ruby didn't. But we've all had some combination of tennis, travel, human connection change our lives. And that is kind of a common link that we all feel is something we want to pass on to as many people as possible. And we all know from our own experiences, it doesn't require playing D1 tennis, playing pro tennis. It can be for anyone. And that's something that we felt more people need to be aware of. I think a lot of times when I tell people what Atlas tennis is, they ask, my kid's not at that level of player. I'm like, as long as they're passionate about the sport, the opportunities are there. And that's something that we love showing to people. And I think we're proof of that. We're 6 people that never would have met was it not for those 3 things.
In addition to the adults behind Atlas, we also have our coaches who are really the backbone of our trips. The coaches make the trip, and that's from the start when they meet all of the players. So coaches are selected based on a number of factors, but again, the top priority for us is their responsibility and ability to chaperone our players and provide that 24/7 supervision. So we want to ensure, and we do ensure, that they're trustworthy, that they've had an international tennis experience, that they know how to work with teens and support that junior player development, because that's key in these formative years. We want to make sure that they have a mentor, they have someone in their network that they can look up to and be a role model, who supports them not only as a player, but as a growing individual who's almost getting ready to go to college or whatever their next endeavor is. So our coaches kind of come from a variety of backgrounds, but again, those core tenets are seen throughout all of them. And a lot of our coaches are current or former college players or college coaches. You can see on the screen here, we've our coach last year was Tyler Thompson. He's the associate women's head coach at the University of North Carolina. He was killer with our kids. Not only taught them a ton of tennis and strategy, but also gave them great insights on the college experience, coming from multiple national championships with his players. He had one this past fall. He was able to give a ton of insight, and just super supportive. And he's even looking to come back because he had such a great experience, and his kid went on our trip. He loved it. So that was super exciting for us. And whether it's him with his expertise in tennis acumen, or Ben and Megan giving their coaching expertise as well, those are all super important, pivotal factors in making sure that we have a great trip. And especially with college players, college coaches, they've worked with teams, they know what it's like to build camaraderie among kids from different backgrounds. And so that component is key, not only the tennis, not only the individual development, but building a team that you leave the Atlas trip and you feel like you have friends from all over the world that you're going to remain in contact with for a long time. And we've seen that happen through our lifelong connections. And these coaches are pivotal in making our players become friends and become a team. So really it turns into the Atlas team by the end of the trip.
The tennis, it's in the name, Atlas Tennis. We do a lot of things, but central always is the time we're spending on court. You know, I always tell people these are tennis trips in addition to the sightseeing, the social connection, the travel, all of it. Tennis really is 1A. And that doesn't mean that we're playing 8 hours a day and forcing people to play, nothing like that. But, the really only requirement that we have in terms of tennis is not level-based. It's, excitement about playing a lot, getting excited to be on court, and improve. So how do we do that? What does the tennis look like? First and foremost, player development, personal development. The two are not only both important, they're very much intertwined. That is our belief. Everything that we do to help our players improve as players ties into helping them improve as people. What does that look like on the court? For us, in a 3-week period, we're not doing very much technique and feeding a ton of balls and working on their form, a little bit here and there where it's appropriate. But our philosophy is that those types of development aspects are best left to each coach back home, who's with the player, week in, week out throughout the year. For the 3 weeks a year that they're with us, we want them to have a chance to apply what they've been working on back home. And we want to complement that. One thing I do before the trip is I speak, or Ruby will speak with the coach of every player that's on our trips to learn about them as a player, what they're working on, how can we support that, and to make sure that we're never stepping on any toes, and that whatever we're coaching them, whatever we're providing to hopefully help them, only adds to what they're already working on. The development is through competition for us. We're playing as many matches as possible. We're entering tournaments in different countries, so the kids are getting a chance to play most often on red clay against people that they know nothing about. They don't know their UTRs. They don't even know their names. They're just playing tennis. So a lot of the matches do count for UTR, and we understand kind of the value and importance of that. But at the same time, there is so much value and importance in kind of getting out of that bubble for a minute and just being in a completely new environment, which is one, challenging, and two, refreshing. I grew up playing USTA tournaments. Ruby did as well. I still go to them. I see it's not always the warmest, friendliest, most fun environment. Complete change in Europe. These are social events that the clubs take pride in putting on and welcoming us into. And our kids, they're more often than not shocked at just how enjoyable a tennis tournament can be, how much less pressure there is when there is just a fun vibe in the air. And it doesn't take away from the competitive aspect and the opportunity to really learn how to win. And there doesn't feel like there's a de-emphasis on trying to win, but there's just so much more going on, and our players tend to thrive. And maybe they don't come away in 3 weeks after the trip feeling like, I just got so much better at tennis, because it's not really going to happen in 3 weeks. But actually, about now, 6 months after the trip, I like to sometimes look at our kids' UTR, their results, and I've just been blown away at some of the jumps in their results and their records. Some of that's normal, but when we have kids that have gone up 2 UTR points, that it's awesome. And I don't say that to take the credit for it, because I think our coaches are the best in the world, but no coach is going to get someone 2 UTR points better in 3 weeks. But I think that the environment we were able to encourage them to be in unlocks that level that is already there, that they've already been working on and developing. So we're trying to play as many matches, get the kids as many competitive opportunities as possible. If they're not in the tournament, we'll set up extra practice matches. We'll try to get them doubles, consolation matches. We don't want anyone just kind of sitting around. And in addition to all that, we do practice every day, or at least I'd say 6 days a week. Typically, those practices are run college style, so mostly live ball, lots of high energy. I like to bring drills that I did when I was a college coach, and Tyler from UNC is doing the same. So we're giving the kids a bit of a taste of what college tennis can feel like, whether that's something they're interested in and considering or not. I think it's just an awesome introduction to what that feels like. And in more ways than not, these trips do tend to feel pretty similar to what it's like to travel with a college team.
So like Ben said, yeah, it's tennis trips first and foremost, but we're also going to be taking advantage of the places we're in, these incredible European countries and cities to explore. So that can look like tours of La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, walks along Las Ramblas, eating paella, listening to Spanish music in a restaurant, all those things, eating gelato in Italy, having dinner in a Swiss chalet overlooking the Alps. And so in addition to those kind of cultural experiences that you can take your mind off tennis for a second and enjoy the place that you're in, we also want to take players to some of the coolest pro tournaments in Europe, and one of those being Wimbledon. Of course, that's on my bucket list, on a ton of people's bucket list, parent, child, regardless. To go to that tournament is awesome, and we're so happy that we get to take our players there, and that they're not just going there to watch players, whether on center court or the practice courts, they're going to actually meet the players. So like we said, our network is super connected within the tennis world, and we're able to actually have chats with pro players. So our players have met Matteo Berrettini, Casper Ruud. We text Casper Ruud's dad saying, hey, we have 10, 15 kids here. We'd love to connect and get to talk to Casper post-match. And if we're lucky, it happens. And that conversation's not a quick hi photo, which we'll get a photo. It's also ask our kids candidly and so genuinely asking, what is it like to play on tour? What was your junior development like? Tell us kind of what's it like balancing your family, if you have one, with tennis and all those things. And that rapport and relationship that they're building with a pro player for a moment is so amazing to watch. And all the kids open up. And again, those exclusive, exciting opportunities happen with our network. And we're so glad to afford those to our kids. So it's Wimbledon, the Swiss Open, which we go to and we're excited to return to, as well as we'll be heading to the Estoril Open in Portugal this year as well, where Eric Butorac actually has 2 titles from. So it's just super exciting, not only on the court development and amazing experiences, it's what we can do off that's also exciting.
All right. This is a very common question. What's a typical day look like? The extremely cliched, overdone answer that I really don't like giving, but I kind of feel like I have to, is that there is no typical day. So apologies for that. But with that out of the way, to kind of give you a sense of what a day may look like. Normally we're waking up in the ballpark of 7 to 8, sometimes a little later because these evenings can go a little late into tournaments, especially in places like Spain where, we show up to dinner at 8 o'clock and we're the first ones at the restaurant. But yeah, so normally we'll have a morning practice that can be anywhere from 2.5 hours. We're doing some footwork drills and really going hard, especially earlier in the trip when everyone's fresh and excited. We'll spend probably more time in that morning session. And then later on in the trip, we may scale that back. So morning tennis is pretty common, pretty standard. After that, we usually go back to the hotel, have a bit of a rest, lunch. Either nearby the hotel is probably the most typical. We try to stay places where there's a lot of options, walking distance. And when we're in smaller towns, we love to give the group the chance to kind of go off in groups of 3 or more and explore a little bit on their own. We're chaperoning them 24/7, but we're not on top of them. We want to give the groups freedom to explore and have some independence when appropriate. And also, as a trip goes on, as we establish kind of more trust, that can kind of be more open. After lunch, the afternoons, there's typically going to be more tennis. It may be a second practice, but usually when we're doing our tournament weeks, the tournaments will get going later in the day in the afternoons. And it'll be really dependent on what the tournament schedule looks like. It's not too different than playing a tournament back home where your schedule is a bit dictated on when do you play, when does the tournament director put you in for, do you win? Are you playing the next day? Or are you out? So we do have kind of to have some flexibility with that, but our coaches will typically every night get the schedule for the next day, make a plan, say this group's going to go practice in the afternoon while I take this group to the tournament. Then they're going to come over and watch them play. So it's a little bit of a moving target every day, just like any tournament, but our coaches are always optimizing to make sure, again, no one's ever just sitting around. As the weeks go on, so later in the week, typically the tournament will wind down, kids will be eliminated or win, knock on wood. That's when we'll start to dig in more to the sightseeing. We'll try to dedicate at least a half day, sometimes a full day if the schedule allows, to go into the nearest city, whether that's Barcelona, whether that's Amsterdam, London. It varies depending on where we are, but we'll never go somewhere, just play tennis and leave. We're always taking advantage of these amazing cities and countries that we're going to. So sightseeing is always going to be a component of what we do. Sometimes it may be a bit more, sometimes it may be a bit less. And because we have 2 to 3 coaches, we can sometimes split up the group. One group wants to really see, a beach a few minutes away. Another group wants to play an extra session. We can split that up. We can make that happen. Parents like to ask, are we going to have an itinerary of, day by day, hour by hour? And for our travel days and things where everything's pre-planned, yes, we will. We want to be as organized as possible. But there's also a lot of days where we kind of have a more tentative plan and we will adjust based on the tournament and then also, of course, the weather. We hope for 3 weeks of no rain, but that hasn't happened yet. Maybe 2026 will be the year, but we're ready kind of for all scenarios. And then last thing I'll say on what a typical day may look like, our travel days are going to be totally different. We typically will fly earlier in the day, get to our destination and try to get a hit in that same day that we arrive. Definitely try to avoid any flights too early in the morning, but when you're traveling around Europe, especially as a group, you do need to build in a lot of cushion just to make sure we're where we need to be with enough time. So those days are more unique, but we try to fit in some tennis where we can. And fortunately, all the flights are 1 to 2 hours maximum. All right, so getting into our 2026 summer trips. These top 4, the signature summer, the bucket list, the legendary trip, and the castles to coast, those are all kind of our core European summer experiences. The format there's a lot of differences with each. I'm not going to get into the details of each one because that'll be 30 minutes right there. Happy to kind of talk through any of them individually with people afterwards or anytime. But what to know about those 4 is, they all depart end of June, plus or minus a day here or there. They're all 3 weeks, plus or minus a couple days. new country each week, combination of playing tournaments, going to some academies, going to pro tournaments, kind of what we've described. So those 4 all have unique things about each one. And like I said, happy to discuss what might be the best fit for any individual player based on age, level, gender, all of that. But that's kind of a general framework of what those 4 look like. And then excited to announce tonight, this is a info session exclusive. We have our French summer circuit that we've been working on trying to finalize, and we're happy to share that we are set and trying to make this happen for 2026. This is a new experience, working with some really solid coaches in France, a country that has probably the best tennis tournament structure, development structure in the world. The UTR system is based on the French system, so everyone has probably been more touched by the French system than they may even realize. So what that trip is going to look like is we'll start in Paris, we'll fly there, do a couple days in Paris playing at a really cool club. It's actually where a lot of players will train while they're at Roland Garros or in the lead up to it. So amazing clay courts, great location. And we'll do a couple days exploring some of the big sites in Paris. And then we will head out to the Atlantic coast. We'll be staying in a region with beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, and we'll be connecting with this program from France, with these coaches. And basically what we're going to do is have a big house. It'll be half Americans, half French kids, some American coaches, some French coaches, and in 2 weeks, playing 5 to 6 tournaments. The French system is such that you're able to schedule multiple tournaments at the same time. The tournaments will be kind of scheduled in a way where you'll almost certainly have multiple matches in the same day, maybe clubs 20 minutes apart, but they work so there's no conflicts. It is a puzzle, and that's why we're working with a French group that's able to help us with that scheduling. It is a beast and not something that I could do without speaking French and knowing it, but having this connection from really like a top French coach, top French player. She played college tennis in the US. We're super lucky to have them. So for any players that are thinking of like, how can I go over to Europe and just play a ton of matches on red clay? This is the trip for you. There's still obviously a ton of culture. You're going to go to Paris and you're getting to really live with, some French tennis players as well. I think it's going to be so cool. I'm excited to see it for at least part of the trip as well. But that one will be, more unique and different than our core trips. And speaking of different, unique kind of experiences, we have the American adventure that Ruby's going to talk about.
Yeah, so we've been bringing kids over to Europe for a while, and now we're excited to bring Europeans to the US and also open this trip up to everyone because we've received such big interest from not only Europeans, but people within the US, people in Canada, et cetera. So this trip is in Boston and New York City, the 2 iconic spots when you think of the US, if you're not from here, of where you might want to go. So in Boston, we'll spend a few days there. This is our other trips happen within that June-July timeline. This one is August 13th to August 21st. And so the first couple of days are in Boston, where they'll have the opportunity to play tennis at Tufts, then additionally visit Harvard, meet the Harvard men's tennis coach who we have some relationships with there, and just have a mix of training as well as competition with players at local clubs around there. So again, we're bringing our European coaches that we have. We have relationships with some Spanish coaches that we visit for our other trips. And so they'll be coming with the European group and then meeting our American players or wherever else they're coming from in Boston. And that'll be a great opportunity to really have that cultural immersion on home soil if you're from here. And then we will also have an opportunity for an exchange with the Longwood Cricket Club. It's one of the oldest tennis clubs in the world, and those are grass courts. We'll have an awesome opportunity to train with players there before going to a Red Sox game with all of our players, and then taking the train to New York City for the US Open during Fan Week. Again, Ben is there. We'll be working there, and Eric, of course, is the tournament director. So again, an opportunity to watch and meet pro players will be super exciting. We'll mix in tennis training, and that will be a lot of kind of group training focus. and you'll be able to experience the sites here. So we're super excited to offer that, not only to Europeans, but to open it up more broadly as well.
This is less exciting question, but a good one to address. So what if someone gets injured or sick? We want to be prepared. That's kind of the number one thing I would say. And we our coaches are prepared, and we never hesitate to seek medical attention when needed, when appropriate. In every country we go to, we have relationships with locals that can help us, identify the help we need immediately, whether that's a hospital, a doctor for something specific. Everywhere we go, we're within probably 15 minutes of medical care on par or better than we have back home. And if ever needed, we always have locals that can help us translate. Most of the time, doctors speak English, but we're not afraid to kind of use whatever resources are necessary to make sure that people have the care they need. And there are many instances in the past where this has happened. Fortunately, nothing serious. Everyone has been back on the court really the next day. But we always have something that comes up, usually minor, and just out of an abundance of caution, we will not hesitate to take kids to get the care they need, and always in complete communication with parents back home. We'll have the kid communicate with the parents. We're always available to discuss what's going on. We want them to be as in the loop as possible with whatever the situation is. Take their guidance when needed and when appropriate, and really just make them feel, as much a part of the situation as possible and as appropriate. So really the short answer there is we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure it gets taken care of, and we do the necessary preparation so that we're never scrambling. We're never looking at each other. What do we do? Where do we go? We have that taken care of so that, we're not just getting the care, we're getting it promptly, so that, as has been the case in the past, kids are back on the court as soon as possible. And if there's ever a situation where a kid is, has an injury, whether it's something that's been ongoing or it happens on the trip, we would never, you got to play, come on, push through it. If someone's tired, they're banged up, they have an injury, take a rest. No pressure whatsoever. Scale back, hit lightly if you want. We're not in the business of forcing anyone to play. We're in the business really of injury prevention and getting everyone home super healthy so that they can keep the momentum going and keep playing. So always happy to expand on that, but that's really what our approach is when it comes to that situation. So what's included in these trips? Very common question. I know this seems like a lot of bullet points, and I could get into the nitty-gritty of all of it anytime, and I could go on for a while. But the big picture is the main thing to know. The big expense that is not included in the price are the flights to and from Europe. The flights within Europe are included. Pretty much all transportation is included. The flights to and from are the only big expense that isn't. The reason for that is because those flight costs are going to be different depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from New York, you're coming from LA, Chicago, wherever, it's going to vary. And then a lot of families, if they have extra points and miles, they're eager to use those on these flights, which is great. We'll have like a team flight. Everyone will fly over together from New York. Most kids will fly in earlier that day, meet in New York at the airport, and then we'll all fly over together. We'll kind of say this is the flight to book, or we can book it for you. Either way works. And it's not a requirement though. If someone says I live in Boston and it's easier to just fly directly to Barcelona, for example, and I'll meet you there. The flights land around the same time. That's no problem. We have that, very common and always works just as seamlessly. So we're happy to kind of accommodate, but the general framework there is everyone will meet in New York, connect, get the kind of social interaction going. Everyone starts to get comfortable with each other. And then by the time we're landing in Europe, everyone's already, knows each other. But at the same time, the kids that meet us there, they're integrated in, 4 hours. In terms of the rest of the bullet points here, I guess I'll just mention really quick about public transit that's not included. The reason that like metro and city buses I only mention that because sometimes the requirement is you have to use your own credit card. We can't just use the same one over and over and over again. But that was, a couple dollars or euros. But just wanted to mention that.
And then really based on all this and conversation with us, the next step is enrolling. And so it's simple as submitting an application, which I'll send out after the session, and that is on our website and we can send to you at any point. And what it asks, again, basic information, and just so we can get to know more about your player, what they're looking to get out of this, as well as Ben has mentioned, we contact a coach reference and then a non-coach reference. The coach reference is so we can see where we want to meet your players at, and we can inform our coaches of how best to support them on the court. And then a non-coach reference is really so we can understand how does your player get the most out of our trip. And so hearing from them about how they integrate with the group, what their interests are, those type of insights are super helpful for us because they know their player better than we do at that point. So we just want to be as informed and meet your players where they are so that they can have the best, most fruitful experience. And after that, once the application's approved, once we contact the references, and your players can feel free in that process to meet with us, to talk to us throughout, then it'll be a 25% deposit to lock in that spot. And then we'll kind of guide you through the rest of that process, booking flights and just giving you information throughout. And at a certain point, you'll meet the coaches and have a meeting with them for your players. So that's kind of that process there. We'll send you the application after this. But before that, we can, of course, help you determine what the best trip is for your player.
All right. So to wrap everything up and kind of put a bow on what we've shared, I just want to touch a little bit on why Atlas from my perspective. I think Eric really said it extremely well, and hopefully this isn't too redundant, but there's a lot of bullet points. I could do a whole presentation just on this slide, but first of all, college preparedness, I have that on there. That really could be reframed as just, growth and unlocking, that next step of maturity that tends to happen on these trips. Parents say things like, my kid is unrecognizable in certain ways afterwards. Just they've taken a huge step towards growing and maturing. And I think that's something that, again, I don't view that as something that like Atlas Tennis did for them. I think they're doing it themselves, and we're able to hopefully provide that opportunity for them to unlock it. And so that's just something that is awesome, and we're excited to continue doing. It's not something that we're necessarily it's a requirement for success as everyone comes back more mature, but it happens naturally, and that's really, I think, the only way to do it. I think that ties in well with just the emphasis on personal growth. A lot of this does happen naturally, but our coaches, because they're college coaches, this concept of personal growth, of development as a person is core to what they do. Most college tennis coaches would not be in the business of college tennis if they just were about forehands and backhands and getting someone, a few more miles an hour on their serve. They'd probably work at a tennis club. The magic of college tennis is just that team environment, that learning how to work with new people. It's the thing I loved about college tennis as a player and as a coach. And it's something that I think we bring into Atlas. And great thing is we're able to bring kind of those best parts of college tennis into a new environment, something that's a little bit different. Thinking about tennis development through competition, I talked about it when I talked about our tennis and what that kind of looks like. This is a chance for kids to get out there and just play, just compete. You're not worried about UTR. You're never going to see these kids or whoever you're playing again unless you stay in touch with, which often happens. And it's just a bit of a blank canvas, a blank slate for them to play and hopefully remove some of that pressure that can come with being at the same clubs, the same tournaments against the same kids in the draw that just gets shuffled every weekend. And I love seeing how different people approach that. I think at first it can be a little unsettling, but by the end of the trip, and especially once kids get back home, it's so valuable to just go out there and just compete flat out. This is the type of trip that is once in a lifetime. It feels cliche to say that, but anecdotally, all the time, at least once a week for years now, people say, oh my God, I wish you had trips for adults, or I wish that when I was a kid, I knew about this. And to me, that just shows like people that are older and kind of past that when they had that opportunity, see how special this is. And our hope is that, when today's teenagers are adults, they're not saying, I wish this was around when I was a kid. Like, it's around, and this is the chance. We've toyed for years with doing adult trips, but it's different. I think, I'm not ruling that out, but just the magic of going over with a group of young people to explore the world is something just unique and special that I think is fleeting. And that's why like teenagers are really like the perfect group to do this with. I mean, I'm in that category of like, I wish I did this when I was a teen. And then the last thing I'll say is just the network that being a part of the Atlas tennis community can unlock. Going through our partners, it's an awesome group. I think like I've been in this world for a while. I know a lot of people, whether it's college coaches, whether it's tennis pros. I mean, I've past parents emailing me all the time, do you have recommendation for this or that? And I'm writing college recommendations for kids, at least probably 3 a year. And those are just, it's a pleasure to do those. I'm honored to be asked to do it. And I feel like we get as much out of those connections as I hope other people do. But just that community is continuing to grow really every day and especially every year. And it's something that I think is super special. And I think other people have felt the same. And to have a chance to be a part of that, I think is something that is just a kind of added bonus to everything else that we've talked about.
Yeah. Now we'll open it up to whatever questions. Feel free to turn off or open your mic to ask them here or put them in the chat, whatever works. Again, we know it's a lot of information, so we're happy to have one-on-one conversations after the fact and then tailor it more specifically to your child. But if you have general questions, let us know. But yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. When you talked about the Boston, New York trip, you spoke a lot about training and other physical discipline that is part of playing tennis. And I know I came on late. Is that part of all the programs, all the trips, where there is a built-in mindset that training and stretching and doing all the appropriate exercises to build muscles and all that stuff? Is it included? Is it an emphasis? Because I think it's critical. So it's a question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that the approach that we have is going to vary a bit for the Boston, New York trip, which is 8 or 9 days versus the 3-week trip. In both cases, this emphasis on really for us, it's about injury prevention. We're not going to be doing, weightlifting and much in the way of strengthening because it's a short period of time and we are really competing. It's more of a period of maintenance and injury prevention. But that is absolutely something that's, every day when we're practicing, we are getting a good thorough warm up in. We're taking time afterwards to stretch, especially with the time that we're spending on clay courts, learning how to move on clay. It's quite different. And when we're in Boston and New York, it will be more probably exclusively hard court, except when we go to Longwood and we're on grass. But it'll be every day, and a significant emphasis on good warm-ups, especially because it could be hot, could be cool, regardless of the weather. Proper nutrition, proper hydration, making sure the kids are taking care of themselves because, they're playing a lot of tennis. And I cannot tell you how predictable it is that, the first couple of days, and it's worse with jet lag, but everyone comes out, they're super excited and they want to play for 5 hours and they have the energy, but the body's not prepared for that. So we sometimes have to kind of scale back to keep everyone healthy so that, like I said before, by the end of the trip, they're energized and feeling good so that after the trip, they can keep playing and keep that momentum going. Great question.
Thank you.
Of course. Yes, Andrea.
I have a question about the France trip. Is that 3 weeks also?
That one is going to be about 2.5. So we'll
Okay.
fly over to Paris on, I believe it's a Wednesday, and then return the 2 Sundays later.
Okay, and is it pretty much same, and it's around the same dates in June?
Yeah, same dates. I think the departure, I believe, is July 1st off the top of my head.
Yep.
And level-wise, same as the others?
So that one I would say is probably going to skew, not to say that it's restricted, but it's a lot of tournament play. I think players that are probably have more tournament experience will get more out of that one, I would say. Not to say that someone that's not really eager wouldn't have an amazing trip too, but I think it's going to be, a more intense experience just playing up to 6 tournaments in 2 weeks, which sounds crazy, but so that's a minimum of 6 matches, and assuming that you're winning some, I mean, that's matches every day for 2 weeks theoretically. So it will be intense. I think in terms of exact level, it's hard to put an exact number on it or UTR. But I would say in general, that one is going to be probably best suited to players that have a little bit more experience in competition environments, whether that's USTA tournaments, UTR tournaments. It could even be high school tennis.
And if you are, like, my daughter is very passionate about tennis and does USTA tournaments, and she's at tennis right now. She plays a couple hours a night on her high school team, but she will not play in college. She might think she is, but if I had to guess, she's not. What trip would you say is suited more for that level?
Yeah, I mean, I think for those individual cases, I would want to maybe just talk a little bit more with you one-on-one to learn what might be the best fit. My short answer is really any of them could be a great option. As we get into like probably March and April for the late bloomers, people that are not planning their trip until later into the cycle, we may start to be like, hey, this trip is really filled up with kids at a certain level. We recommend this one. Okay. Right now, they're all pretty balanced. So as of now, I think it really comes down to what itinerary sounds the best. Is there any country that sounds the best? Those are kind of, I would say, the big considerations at the moment. But happy to talk one-on-one.
And I'm guessing you do the same for like gender and age also in terms
of. Yep. That's always a consideration when we're, building the trips.
And so, sorry, I'm taking one more question. Taking too much time. Is there typically like an age that you see the most, like going into like senior year, high school, or?
Yeah, I would say every year we have everyone from going into 9th grade going into college, and everything in between. If I had to say most common, I would say it's slightly more towards probably going into sophomore, junior, and senior year. So I guess if you average those out, going into junior year is probably our number one most common year. But anywhere in high school is going to feel like they fit in. And I frame it like this. Like, I think sometimes parents, 2-year age gap, that seems a little big. But I frame it like a high school or a college team where you may have freshmen and seniors, 4-year age gap. And the connection there can just be super meaningful still. And I think our trips tend to play out similarly.
Great. Thank you. Sounds great.
Yeah. I have another question.
I had my hand raised.
Go ahead.
I say that because that's my mother, so I can say that to her. I think Andrea, if I'm saying her name correctly, asked a lot of the questions that I was going to ask. I was really curious about age and skill and which trip is the best. So would love to know, how do I schedule a one-on-one moment with you in terms of finding more of that out? As well as my mother asked earlier a lot about kind of that physical training, and I'm wondering about, is there like a focus on mental training and mental health? And then I did have another question, but I forget it at the moment. But if it comes up, I'll ask.
Yeah, well, I'll answer those, and maybe the last one will come to you. But in terms of scheduling some time one-on-one to talk with me or Ruby or both of us, we will send a follow-up email, and our emails are on there. Just shoot us a note, and we will set something up at your convenience. We're around, we're flexible during the day, nights, weekends, whatever works best. We're happy to do that. In terms of kind of an emphasis on mental training and mental health, mental wellness, Absolutely. It's a lot of pressure to go out there and compete, especially with kids that you don't know. We don't take that lightly. We don't just kind of like toss that aside. Our coaches are always kind of talking about that, talking about how to approach these matches, both in terms of a mental toughness component as it relates to tennis, but then also more broadly, just having a kind of healthy mental outlook on what is undoubtedly a nerve-wracking experience on day one. That first moment when everyone gets to the airport, there's a lot of nerves, and I get it. And our coaches are doing everything they can to kind of get that eliminated within probably a day or two. And it doesn't just, some of it does come naturally. You put everyone together, they realize that common link they have with tennis and then everything else they have in common, and the walls kind of come down. But it's also a very concerted effort from our coaches and from myself and Ruby to take the actions to make that happen, do team building activities, get comfortable and getting to know each other. So that's all, a part of what we do. And then our college coaches in particular, like Tyler's a great example of someone who he's talking about mental health, mental wellness with his team all year round. And a lot of those same concepts he's applying to super high level D1 athletes. They apply just as well to our kids. And it's not fall on deaf ears, especially coming from, a well-respected college coach who has that type of experience. And I think it's really meaningful to see how it kind of gets through to our group, especially maybe not on day one, but by day 10, they're buying in more to kind of what we're talking about.
Thank you. And I did remember the question, but I think it was addressed. So thank you.
Okay. Oh yeah, of course.
So the other question is there a strategy in terms of recruiting young men and women of color? And is there intentionality in terms of on these trips to help the socialization, the whatever they need to navigate this whole community? Because for some, not everybody, for some it will be new.
Absolutely. It's a great question. So when we started Atlas, we all felt very strongly that we never wanted it to be a trip just for kids that, have the resources to make it happen without any problem. Kids from only a select number of towns. We want it to be open to people from everywhere. We've worked with a number of USTA sections, a number of junior tennis programs in different cities to provide scholarships for kids who otherwise wouldn't get that opportunity. And through that work, we get the question of how do you make it so that someone that is, on a scholarship versus not, how do you prevent there from being this kind of feeling of someone standing out, sticking out? And, that's something that we take seriously and are making that effort to prevent it from happening just by treating everyone exactly the same. I would say that in the past, no one has any idea, who's on a scholarship, who isn't. It becomes just not a factor. And that's through kind of us being aware of that and making sure, and our coaches being aware to kind of nip anything like that in the bud. But also just, through the process, I say we're lucky that we've had amazing kids, but I think that part of that is through us trying to be super honest and about what the trip is and isn't, what we're trying to do, our kind of goals of personal development. And I think we've seen that attracts quality individuals from everywhere, who more or less naturally, thanks honestly to all of you doing an amazing job of raising them, they foster this inclusive, warm environment of people from all over. And so I always, I sometimes go to the saying of, we're so lucky to have these amazing kids, and we are, but I realize that it's not just luck. It's a concerted effort now in January and in February, March, through that recruiting process to identify people that are going to be a good fit. As a college coach, same kind of approach I had then, because for 3 weeks, if you have a group that doesn't get along, not only is it a bad experience for the kids, it's a terrible experience for the coaches, for me, for parents, So all of us are aligned on trying to prevent that. And that comes from that effort that starts, really from the day we began.
Thank you.
Of course. I know we're at 9:02, so don't feel compelled to stay on, but I'm staying here for as long as people have questions. But if anyone needs to drop, not a problem at all. Appreciate everyone joining, but keep the questions coming if you have any.
Hi, sorry, I had to drop off for a minute. I'm at the airport and I had to go to security, but I was just wondering for the Boston leg of the trip, are there any USTA or UTR matches that are going to be played, or is it more just kind of playing with coaches and like kids playing against each other?
Yeah, a good question. For UTR, we're working on it with the camp that we're going to be partnering with to create some UTR events. Don't have a firm answer yet on it. There'll definitely be a good amount of match play. I think we're aligned on getting that entered for UTR, but I don't want to say 100% yet until we have that locked in. And in terms of USTA tournament, we would love to if there's one that kind of aligns. That mid-August period tends to be a pretty quiet stretch for USTA tournaments. A lot of people are traveling right before school starts again. So it's a little bit dependent on what the availability is in the Boston area. I will say, like, USTA New England is a section that we have an amazing relationship with. So definitely opportunity to work with them, finding something that may work.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I think I'm kind of going in and out, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No worries. Hopefully you got that. Don't be shy. If anyone has any questions, give everyone another minute if they have them. You can raise your hand, put it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute.
Hi, Ben.
Hey.
I had sent a question before this asking about parity with the play. One of the things I find with some of these camps is that my son, who's kind of in the middle of the road with his UTR, often kind of gets lumped with players that perhaps are a little lower in their UTR ranking than him, and not having the opportunity to play with those players that are slightly higher in their UTR rankings. I'm just curious how you try to achieve parity with those players, knowing that there is going to be a spread. You've addressed that, but I'm just curious what your method is to try to ensure that they're playing against players who are maybe slightly higher ranked or slightly lower ranked, so that they're not. The problem is he often gets lumped in a slightly lower group, and so that he doesn't have that competitive sense that he might have playing those slightly higher ranked players.
Yeah, I think our approach to that, and kind of my belief, is the ideal breakdown is about 50% with players at your level, 25% at a higher level, 25% at a lower level. That's what we're striving for. Does it always play out exactly like that? Honestly, no, because no matter what, there's always going to be someone that has the highest UTR and someone that has the lowest. So the ways that we account for that, one, we always try to have coaches that can hit in and play, and I'm in that group too. I love jumping in and playing. I love kind of, keeping our kids a little humble when I can. When we have, like, whoever that player is that's the highest on the trip, what we'll try to do is find players that are in each country for them to play with, to jump into training. Our coaches are literally walking around clubs that we're training at and seeing, oh, those kids are good. I'm going to ask the coach if you can work in with them. And then they're kind of getting the opportunity to train with kids in another country and a coach that may not even speak English, but just feeding them balls and they're going. So that's a really cool experience as well. And that's actually one of the things that I like to go down once a year to JTCC, where Megan trains. And I straight up ask her that question. I'm like, I want to just spend a day and learn from your coaches. How do they account for this? Because it's the most common question I think any tennis coach has, is how do you account for that different level and make sure the best kid, the worst kid, and everyone in between is getting a super high quality experience. And there's a lot of different strategies when it comes to the drills that you're doing to account for those times where the level may not be balanced, whether it's doing 2-on-1s or adjusting the feeds or, shrinking the court for one player. Our coaches are being trained on how to account for that, in addition to, understanding that we got to find everyone good players to play with. We're first and foremost, we're building a trip so that there is that parity. We would never have a trip where one player is just like far and away at a level that doesn't fit in with the rest of the group, because again, like my last answer, no one wins with that. So we're kind of thinking about that even now as people start to express interest, trying to steer them towards a certain trip that may be like, oh, if your kid is a 6 UTR, oh, we have 3 6 UTRs on this trip. It may be a really good option. If you want to go on this other one, also fine. But as of now, this is the one that has kind of the best fit UTR wise.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate that.
Of course. Very good question. Anyone else? If not, and if you do, just jump off mute. But if not, our virtual door is always open for one-on-one conversations. Happy to answer more questions, email, phone call, Zoom like this, really anytime. And, go from there. We're happy to kind of have these conversations. And I'm sure, like Ruby said, there's a lot of information. Digested a bit, questions will come up, so send them away. We will have a follow-up email to this, and then we'll also tomorrow have our monthly newsletter that the recording of this will be on. I think everyone that's here probably doesn't need to watch the recording, but you're welcome to, or share it with anyone else that may be interested in. And we look forward to keeping the conversation going and staying in touch with everyone. Really appreciate you spending some time with us tonight and asking just only good questions. These were all really good questions. And we're excited to have, hopefully an amazing group with us this summer. Thank you, Sheila. And thank you, everyone. Have a good night.